You are listening to Off the Shelf, a podcast by The Conference Board.
I'm Rebecca Ray, Executive Vice President for Human Capital at The Conference Board, and welcome to this latest edition of Off the Shelf, a podcast series from The Conference Board. I'm joined today by a seasoned executive and mentor with experienced insights on preparing future leaders, Dr. Andrew Temte, President and Global Head of Corporate Learning at Kaplan North America. He's a thought leader on issues related to workforce skilling and upskilling. His 30-year career includes teaching and executive leadership roles in both professional education and higher education institutions. Welcome, Andy, and thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Rebecca. Glad to be here.
Well, we're excited to talk about your latest book, Balancing Act. And I thought maybe we'd start with, what prompted you to write the book? How does it reflect the years of experience and insights that you've gleaned?
Yeah, so, back in 2017, I had this kind of urge to tell a series of stories to fellow mid-level senior executives. So, I knew that there were a lot of us out there, individuals who weren't at the top of the pyramid of the business, but one or two levels down from that, but still fairly senior in the organization. And that's where I've lived most of my career in both president and CEO roles, not completely owning the narrative, but having to manage both up, down, and across in an organization. So I started writing a series of articles, posted them on LinkedIn and other sources, and over a 3.5-year period, I had accumulated enough content that in the early stages of the pandemic decided, now is the right time to get these stories out there.
Well, I think that's admirable. There's no end to the number of people who have ideas about how to get ahead. It's another to hear from someone who's sort of done it and can point to some successful examples. So, Andy, let me ask you to just sort of shape, if you will. I know you have this lifelong learning mindset. It's sort of a continuous improvement, kind of working on yourself and having the impact on others that you hope to have and looking for that organizational success. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about your philosophy and then maybe lead us into the concept you talk about in the book, which is organizational entropy.
Yeah. So, the book in a nutshell is it speaks to a series of balancing acts that we play in our personal lives and our professional lives, how those things overlap onto one another. And kind of halfway through writing the book, it dawned on me that as part of the laws of thermodynamics, which we're not going to get into today, but there's this concept of entropy that over time, all things fall apart. And it's this natural state of falling apart that then once you kind of wrap your mind around that, then you have to have something that balances that out, and a series of tools or a toolkit that then allows you to kind of put things back together. That is this kind of virtuous cycle of things falling apart in our lives and then working to put them back together. And it is those successful leaders, managers, and individual contributors who recognize that entropy is a natural state of the universe. Things are going to naturally fall apart, and that's okay as long as we learn from those events and also equip ourselves as quickly and efficiently as possible, put ourselves back together after we have a misstep.
So that's rather interesting, is to sort of plan for, I say failure, that's not right, but plan for the natural cycle of things, right? So what does it show up like in the organization, and how do you address it when you see it?
Yeah, it's hard to pinpoint sometimes because human beings, by their nature, don't like to air all of their dirty laundry. They don't like to have all of their warts on display for the world to see. So, we work very hard as humans to kind of create a veneer of excellence, create a veneer of always being on top of things. And so it takes again a tool set, a management and a leadership tool set to put the right kind of frameworks in place to ensure that we're not only telling the really positive, the really great stories that our division or team or as individual contributors, those really positive stories that we have to tell, but also to ensure that the challenges that we face are on full display because as business leaders and as businesses, we need people to trust each other. We need teams to reach out and lend a helping hand when somebody's having a struggle or when a team is not quite meeting a goal because we're all in this together, and we need that to be a much more natural state. But since we're all so used to kind of the false advertising, if you will, of making sure that everything looks great to the outside world, we're really missing a trick in building organizational trust, which is really the goal of all of this, by balancing clarity, excellence, and goal setting with accountability frameworks. So that we can all hold one another accountable to the goals that we establish for the business.
Yeah, so Andy, getting people to trust each other in the workplace is never all that easy. So how do you foster that culture of trust? How do you encourage people to bring their whole selves to work? As you put it a moment ago, warts and all. How do you? No adult likes to admit that there are things they don't understand, or things that frighten them, or things that they are fearful they will lose credibility. How do you build that kind of culture?
Yeah, humans abhor change, and a lot of people, they try to convince themselves that, oh yeah, I like change. I like to do new things, but when change really comes, the real pushing and shoving of change, most leaders, most managers, and individual contributors, again, they work really hard to maintain the status quo. A lot of folks take the position of this too shall pass, and if I just wait long enough, this change will wash over the organization, and I'll be able to get back to what I'm comfortable with. And this is, business is not necessarily rocket science unless you're in the business of building rockets necessarily, but the concept of creating clarity within an organization, understanding organizational purpose, the North Star of the business, and telling that story over and over and over again until, as a leader, it almost hurts to tell that story again, in the ninth different way, in the ninth different modality that you're sending that message. That's what your people really want from you. They want consistency and they want predictability, even in the face of change. So, getting really, really good at setting goals, cascading goals, playing catch ball throughout the organization, and then establishing the accountability frameworks to ensure that we are holding ourselves accountable for outcomes and excellence in our work. Those are kind of the foundations of building that culture of trust. Now, you asked a very specific follow-on question, which is, how do we build a culture where everybody kind of can bring their whole self into the world of work? And this is that place where, directive kind of steamroller managers, my way or the highway, those kinds of managers are quickly receding into the rear view mirror of the business world.
Without
And
question, you're right.
yeah, so we're starting to really see that emotional intelligence and empathy and creating psychological safety, even in the face of a great deal of change, can help individuals bring their whole selves into the world of work. That then creates more opportunities for inclusion, diverse opinions, to create a better business.
Yeah, Andy, I think, if I unpack that a little bit, you made a good point about change. We're all good about change unless it's happening to us. But change for other people, and, when we can tell them exactly how they need to change, we're all over it. It's sort of our gift to them. Andy, we're going to take a quick break. I want to take just a moment and share some announcements, and we'll be right back. I want to sort of pick your brain a little bit about the reskilling revolution you talked about in the book. So stay tuned, everybody. We'll be right back.
Interested in this content? You can find this and much more at our conference board website, www.conference-board.org. Or, even better, contact our membership team and your company can enjoy the benefits of our in-depth research around the economy, environmental, social, and governance issues, public policy, marketing and communications, and human capital. As a member of the conference board, you will be able to have full access to all of our cutting-edge research, leading indicators, benchmarking, and data services, in addition to webcasts and podcasts such as the one you are enjoying now.
Well, we're back to this edition of Off the Shelf, and I'm here with Dr. Andrew Temte, and we're talking about his brand new book called Balancing Act. And I want to pick up the conversation, Andy, talking a little bit about the reskilling revolution that you talk about in the book, and why every leader, seasoned or emerging, should be working on these emotional skills. You mentioned before empathy and a variety of other things, but talk to us about that.
Sure. So the reskilling revolution is really being driven by the geopolitical organization World Economic Forum. And I'm privileged to sit on their skills consortium with a number of other large learning providers. And World Economic Forum has identified a real gap that needs to be closed over the next 10 years, that up to 1 billion people globally will need to be reskilled, not just upskilled around the edges, but reskilled for new roles, new jobs. And that a lot of that is driven by technological change, especially with computers that can think at low cognitive levels, but ever increasing cognitive levels. So what do we as humans have to bring into the world of work? Well, we have our human selves to bring into the world of work. And that's why the concepts of emotional intelligence, empathy, communication, those are some of the key skills of the future and are absolutely part of that reskilling revolution.
So Andy, when you think about the scale, the magnitude of this, that's an awful lot of people to move in a direction that makes the world a better place. What's the way in which you think that can best be done?
Well, there's a lot to unpack in that question. The one thing that I would that I would say to this audience specifically is that human resources, learning organizations, chief executives, et cetera, really have to start thinking about hiring differently. And I write a lot about this concept of skill portfolios versus the degree. And employers really need to be thinking carefully about how they can adjust job descriptions, adjust hiring practices to allow for skill portfolios to be as meaningful in the hiring process and even potentially more meaningful in the hiring process than, oh, Rebecca got a degree from XY University, so therefore she must be wonderful, let's hire her. So that is the one thing that I would say is a key enabler to getting 1 billion people reskilled and hired on skill portfolios over the next 10 years.
So, Andy, when you think about this, it really starts to sound like everyone should be on sort of a let's say, a continuous improvement or a continuous development journey, no matter where you sit in the organizations, leaders or individual contributors, right?
Yeah, I adopted the tenets of continuous improvement in my own life, and it's been extraordinarily helpful to think about the clarity of communication, building trust, not only within the business that I run, but also within friend groups and family, et cetera. And we talked about kind of hiding warts before, and the one thing that I'll point out that's really important about a continuous improvement journey is the concept of visual management. When you make things visual within the organization in terms of the metrics that matter to the organization, or the goals, etc., and you make that available for everyone to see, then this concept of hiding and obfuscating becomes a lot more difficult for folks to do. So that's why I like to combine the concepts of organizational health that we've been talking about, really building trust, along with the concepts of continuous improvement within an organization. That to me is really the secret sauce.
So Andy, let's take our last few moments together and focus on the leader. So the subtitle of your book is Teach, Coach, Mentor, Inspire. And let's just say that a leader struggles with trying to be excellent in all these different areas. So what advice would you have? Do you pick one over the other? Do you try to balance them all? Hence the name of your new book, Balancing Act. What's your advice, Andy?
Yeah, so inspiration is fleeting and can't be planned. So let's toss that one to the side. Mentorship is a very special set of relationships. And so let's set that one to the side. And now you have teacher and coach. Well, if we assume that as a leader, we're always teachers, we're always teaching those around us, I would point leaders to their obligation to be great coaches. And what I've seen throughout my career is that many leaders, many managers really shirk their responsibility to be great coaches and really learn what coaching is all about, to be able to elicit the best out of their people, instead of being super directive in their leadership style. So my advice is hone those coaching skills, and you will find that your path to being a better manager, a better leader, is much more clear.
I think that's excellent advice. I think all of us can learn to be better coaches. And I think all of us have sort of an obligation to help people develop. And coaching is one of the most effective ways to do it. So thank you so much, Andy, for joining and sharing your unique views into the continuous improvement and continual health and development of leaders and organizations. It's been a real pleasure to chat with you, and I want to thank you for your time. And I'm going to encourage all of our listeners to pick up a copy of your brand new book, Balancing Act, Teach, Coach, Mentor, Inspire. And I want to thank you very much for sharing your insights, and I look forward to a future conversation, Andy. So thank you and best of luck here.
Thank you, Rebecca.
This has been Off the Shelf, a podcast by The Conference Board.